Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Straight Outta BS podcast. I want to continue to thank you guys for just continuing to come here with the stories. I've realized that this is actually kind of important. It kind of gives me purpose in life. And I've been kind of depressed lately, so I kind of like the purpose is kind of a good thing to have. So thank you guys for that. Let's keep on getting the word out there about that. Let's break 100 episodes and then break 200. Let's keep on doing this. I want to do a moment of silence for the person still suffering with intrusive thoughts, addiction, anything like that. So on the count of three, I'm going to do a moment of silence. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you for that. And I also want to thank my Patreon members. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you more than you know. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and introduce my guest for the day. Go ahead and introduce yourself and where you went and what year.
My name is Angelique Barcelo. I went to Spring Ridge Academy in 2010 through 2011, and Red Cliff Ascent in Utah in 2011.
Okay, and did you get transported? Or first of all, what led up to you going there? Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so my parents had a really messy divorce. It was actually pretty crazy. So my freshman year of high school, towards the end, my dad had been having an affair with one of my mom's friends. And during that time, my mom was sick and fell into a coma. And when my mom woke up from my dad basically was, and she was in a coma for about a week, and it was the last week of my freshman year of high school. When she finally woke up, he was like there saying that he was going to be with her and all this stuff. And then she woke up and he left. I don't know. I think it was a tug pull that he kind of wanted to save her. Emotionally, I've gone through like a lot of like analyzing of the situation. My dad was like a repeat offender of a cheater, and really like emotionally abusive in that aspect of like betrayal and trust always being broken. So I think at one point he also thought he was saving my mom by leaving. But it was really tough. So my mom picked up, we lived in Monterey, California, Salinas, and we moved to Orange County, and I started my sophomore year there. And then I had really bad depression problems, switching high schools, not fitting in, was always like, I was heavier set. I was kind of talkative, really, really talkative. And, you know, in high school, it's not the coolest thing. So I didn't go to school that much. My mom was dealing with just, you know, recovering from a coma. My grandfather had come and stayed with us because he was actually going through his own divorce. And I just was kind of being a pain. So my mom called my dad being like, I need some help. Can Angelique come back to live with you in Salinas, where she's from? So I move up there, and really quickly I reconnected with an old friend, and she had made new friends. And they were kind of, you know, the more stoner crowd and like getting into some drama and problems. And so I got caught ditching 6-period ceramics every day for a week, which was one of, like, I made it to all my core classes. So like as a young teenager, for me, I was like, oh, I'm a good kid. I'm just missing my elective. But it turned out my dad was in San Diego, which was a flight away, and kept calling my phone. And I kept saying, like, I'm at school. And finally I took the battery out of my phone back in those days to like make sure I couldn't be tracked. And then he ends up leaving his business meeting in the middle of the meeting in San Diego and hopping on a plane because I wouldn't answer my phone, and flying back. That's what made it a little bit more emphasis on his upsetness there. A week later, I got caught smoking weed and drinking. And it was like my second and my first time trying it. But you know, that was enough. I was like, I always say that if I ever did anything, I got caught right away. So it's like, that's exactly what happened. And so I got caught my first few times. Then I got caught having sex, which was a promiscuity thing. Definitely after being therapized and all, comes down to, you know, daddy issues. But we'll get into that later if you want. But anyways, then the following week, somebody found out that my dad found out that I had had sex or had caught me. And it became like a rumor in school because there was another girl who got caught having sex up against a glass window at a party and that same weekend. And so to divert the attention from all the hoopla goopla going on about her, like the school found out about me. And so walking into school on Monday, I start hearing just things in the hallway, people yelling stuff like, "Oh, I didn't know," mentioning the guy's name, like just, mean high school stuff,
Yeah.
And so finally I'm like getting fed up, and I, bullied a lot when I was younger, extremely bullied, and, had a reading disability and all that. So growing into high school is kind of getting better, but, you're still fighting that old persona, especially in a small town. And yeah, so I kind of start asking around. I'm like, who's telling everybody this? Who is telling everybody this? And I find out it was this girl who had her own incident that weekend. And so I go to finally confront her. And apparently people had already started saying things in the hallways back and forth, like, "Oh, she's going to kick your ass because you're talking shit that you're going to kick her ass." And I'm like, "Oh, I will. And so I end up going to the reason confronting her, like, "What are you talking about? What are you saying?" They act like they don't know me. Well, let alone the week before, like that was our group hanging out, going off campus together, doing everything together. So I'm like, okay. And they start talking smack. So I grabbed the girl by the face and I threw her back into the booth at the restaurant. And it turned into like people coming at me, and then the restaurant people kicked us out. And then like obviously the rest of the week through the school is like buzzing, like there's going to be a fight, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I don't want to fight. I don't really care. Like I'm just over this whole thing. Well, I kept getting called out, and when I'm antagonized, I didn't see to act. So I show up, left campus, show up, and then get jumped by her and like 3 other people. I win the first one, even though I win the first one. They didn't like that. Came back with more people. Then that was on a Friday. On the following Monday, my dad actually was on my way to taking me to school, and he goes, I go, "Dad, I got in a fight with those girls you don't like. Like, I won, like, just so you know." And I thought he was like kind of going to be proud. My dad's Cuban, Puerto Rican, very machismo, like taught me how to fight when I was young. And he was pissed, and he was like, "Take that headband off." I was wearing like one of those sparkly headbands that were big in the early 2000s. And he was like, "You need to take that off." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You think you won that fight? They're coming back. They're coming back with more people. Take that off." And little did I know, he was right. They did come back with some more people in the next one. And I ended up having a bald spot over here from almost getting curb stomped, and my head smashed into the ground and stuff. And I had extensions of time. They were flying. Well, I didn't think that was bad, so I went back to class right afterwards. A few of my friends walked by. Actually, a lady ran out of the restaurant because it was near a parking lot, stopped the whole thing. Then 2 of my friends walked by, and they're like, "What are you doing on the ground?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm picking myself up." And they're like, "You have to go to the hospital." I'm like, "Nah, I just got to get back to class. I'll be fine." So I go back to class, and I sit down, and the teacher looks at me. And when I was one of her better students, and the school wasn't necessarily in the best areas, so that mattered. And she was like, "Angelique, you want to go to the bathroom and like clean yourself up?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I go open, and I was in the main hall. I open the door, and I see cops walking down the hall. We had our own little police station on campus because it was pretty ghetto. And I chose not to go to the private school, fought to not. And then so I close the door, and I go sit back down in my seat. And the teacher goes, "Angelique, like, are you sure you don't want to go clean yourself up?" And I'm like, no, I'm okay. I'll just stay." So she goes and opens the door in the hallway. And the police then now see the door open and close twice. Nobody comes out. So now they come from the door. And then she goes, "Angelique, you have to go with them." So they ended up calling my dad. I got a three-day suspension, which he was upset about. He was like, "That's it. That's all she gets." She's like, she'll never be coming back here. Then I had the old Palm Pre. And so it slid up, and like it kind of just looked similar to the iPhone now, where it can just play stuff on command, like when you open messages. Well, me and high schoolers started sending the videos of me getting my head swamped in, and they just started playing on my phone while I'm in the car with my dad. So I snapped that in half. His lovely now wife, and we've gotten through a lot of stuff, but at the time decided she had heard of these boarding schools and these programs. And, it was like I guess if this was over some time period, but I was always like very attitudey at home, but very respectful in public. Never got in trouble with the outside world per se. And even though I was bullied, it wasn't like I was causing problems. So then she suggests these schools, and so it was like 1, 2, 3, 4 strikes, you're out. And the next week, I was told I was going to go tour these schools with him. But, as these schools program the parents and have it very well systematized of how to get kids in there, they don't want you to tour with your parents, because once you see the place and you're like, oh, this is where I'm coming, you're like, no, I don't want to go there. So I was supposed to go tour. They had talked my dad into not having him go with them. And at the time, so he sent me to stay with my mom in Orange County while he was going to go tour these schools. And then at the time, because...
So your dad went by himself?
By himself to tour the schools, because my mom didn't want me to go to them. But prior to her going into a coma while he was having the affair in the beginning of my freshman year, he had came and sat my whole family down and said, I'm leaving you guys, basically, well, your mom, not you, for the other woman. And it turned into a big family brawl, and with like punching happening, my brother tackling, and like eventually a vase being broke over heads and stuff. Like, it was, pretty cinematic, I don't know, movie kind of drama, like Sopranos, like shit, And so my mom ended up getting some charges, which should have been self-defense, but due to her being like, in love with my father at the time and all the circumstances, and him being our sole provider, being very wealthy as well, she wouldn't want to take that away from us and, our father, a provider. So ended up backfiring on her, because then she got these charges, and the DA in Monterey wanted to make a case on domestic violence against women, which was not at all the case or the circumstance. Yeah. But she used her as a public figure. My family pretty well known in the area and pretty socialite-y. They wanted to make a stance, and they used her to do it. So when it came time for me going to these boarding schools, yeah, my dad went by himself and was like, you basically won't see her till she's 18 if she don't go. So.
And so he came back, and then what happened? Did you get transported, or did he bring you up there?
I thought I was going to. You guys seen Zoe 101? Have you seen Zoe 101?
Yeah.
That's where I thought I was going. So I went shopping. I was so excited. They definitely tricked me. I was transported in my later time, from SRA to Wilderness, but I'll talk about that. But yeah, so I went shopping. They gave a list. I thought there was going to be horses, and some of them do have horses, but this one didn't. And get there, and they stripped me of everything that was taken. It's like this nice, beautiful welcome, like when you walk in, for about like 20 seconds. Yeah. And then you realize your life is just crumbling, and they're like, basically, your dad's going to leave you here. Like, you have no rights. Like, we're going to take all your stuff. We're going to walk you to your room. Actually, it was like, so first they got me in the house. They're like, you have a big sister. You should be excited. Welcome. This is a life-changing program, blah, 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 blah. And then they have a staff member and your big sister escort you to your room, where they start unpacking your stuff and where they start taking your stuff. And that's when you realize what's really going on if you weren't transported. Because when you're transported, it's more of like something's going on automatically. But I realized it there. And then I remember after that, I said bye to my dad real quick. And I thought, honestly, I was still kind of naive and oh, this ain't that bad. Whatever, we got plaid skirts, very preppy. We don't have names. I'm a phase 1. That's when I started realizing it. I'm like, okay, I'm a phase 1, not a person. And I'm a red shirt. I'm just affiliated by this color. And the first meal they made me eat right after I got there was manicotti and green beans, which is scarred me forever. I will never eat either one of those things, because it's you have to eat down to a certain amount or you get consequence. And it didn't matter if you like the food or whatever it may be. And I'm kind of a picky eater in general, so that was a little rough. But yeah, so definitely don't eat that to this day.
So how old were you when you got there?
15.
16?
15.
15? Okay. And did they go over any sort of rule manual with you, or hand you a rule manual, or go over any sort of thing like that? Or I know that they butted you up with a big sister, whatever, right? Who probably is supposed to go over the rules with you, but did they actually go over the rules with you? Did they hand you anything? Did they not do anything at all?
So there's a guidebook. So it's a phase book. It was a phase book. So it wasn't like a basically how to do everything here, but it's basically, and I think it's systematically placed, at least in our program, to trick you into, this is kind of like not a game, but like very programming to like, hey, you do X, Y, and Z, you can get this, which eventually will get you this, which will get you out of here. And so, but don't just try to rush through it. So I remember there was like these talks. It's like, you want to get through the phases, but you don't want to get to them too fast. And some of the girls was like, you want to play the game, but you don't want to play too much into it because now they think you're too playing along. So you have to like know, like, so even if you just went with it all, that ain't good enough, So you have to still cause a little problem because now you're too compliant. And that means you're just playing the game and you're going to get out and do whatever. So they want to feel like they really like brainwash you. They really like took control and changed you in a way.
Did they have like that's weird. I don't know. Okay. And okay, there we go. Where was I thinking? Oh yeah. Did they have like consequences and consequence levels? Like, for example, like I went to Spring Creek Lodge and they had like a category system of category 1 through category 5. And so essentially if you broke a certain rule, they'd be like, self-correct your category 2 or self-correct your category 1. Or if you did something really bad, they'd be like, self-correct your cat 5. And that was, you lost all your points, dropped down to level 1 with 0 points. Like, did you have a points and levels thing there?
Yeah, so they're like, obviously if you're phase 1, you can't drop below that. Dropping was like one of the bigger consequences because it takes, 45 to 60 days to get from out of phase 1. And that's just like breaking you phase. Like you don't have your name for a while. You are transported with all the other phase 1s. You cannot talk to certain other people without a staff watching, or the only other people you can talk to are phase 4s because they're about to leave. They're already completely involved in the program. They're helping run the program. They are really big about getting the girls involved in running the program as well as part of the system. So it's kind of more difficult when you see girls your age and people that you're supposed to be allies with, getting you to do stuff as well. Because now you're like, okay, well, they're doing it. They believe in it. And so that's a big part of it. Our consequences were LOAs, which is a loss of activity. So if you had more than two pieces of food on your plate, you talked back, you get a toilet cleaning. Talking back didn't really mean actually talking back, like how people refer to your parents, like talking out of term. Just like, you know what I mean? Like having a conversation with somebody.
They lump it so they can like say pretty much anything is that.
Yes.
Like, make it like blanket statement, like a blanket rule. It's the stupidest shit ever.
Right. And so like you don't even, but you know that it falls under a general of one or the other, or you can get like an early morning cleaning where you're up at 4 a.m. scrubbing the toilets and cleaning the school facility. Like we didn't have one thing I realized too is they made very good use out of our parents' money. We did not have a janitor at all in our program. But
everything, right?
We cleaned everything from the art studio that they try to make look nice for the parents, to our academic building, which was all like the classrooms, to our dorms, and everything. Like in general, in the morning, we all had about 5 to 6 assignments in our own room that we had to do, as well as about 2 that were in the hall or into the dorm itself. Whether it be vacuuming the dorm or, cleaning the laundry room or whatever it may be, or it's kitchen duty. So you're in charge of cleaning the cafeteria and the kitchen. So they obviously made it around discipline and blah, 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 blah. But majority of the times those were consequences. So you could also see on the weeks where we didn't have that many girls getting in trouble or didn't have that cleanup, that you would see a few more people starting to get in trouble because, we don't have that many people on cleanup tomorrow. Oh, you did a little something, you're going to clean up now. Or, and they would switch it also between the dorms sometimes.
Okay. How long after you got there did you realize like, what the fuck is this place? Like, where am I? Like, how long until it really sunk in?
Okay, so I went up in the desert, high desert. Like, I don't even know what the altitude is up there, but it's like known to be extremely high near Prescott. And I'm from living by the beach. So instantly my dehydration messed with me right away. And I was sick for about 4 days. Also kind of the depression I think kicked in and stuff. But they were having it that I was faking it, that I was this or that. But it ended up being almost every time I came back later on when I had home visits, the same thing would happen because of the altitude. And honestly, I'm not the best at drinking water. So then I got on water requirements where I would have to drink a liter of water every hour and have a staff member sign off on it. And even if I was like full and fully hydrated, it like went on for about 6 months. So I was chugging, and our water was never purified or clean. It was always the tap water that came, and we lived next to a trailer park. That was the only thing around for about 30 miles or 20 miles, other than Cordes Junction, this little gas station. And they put us behind a trailer park. So like, it wasn't like the cleanest area that anything was filtered or the pipes were like, to the best or anything like that. So that was the only thing we were allowed to drink too.
Yeah. Okay. 1 second.
Oh, and the other thing for consequence though we did have was loss of activity, which is the LOA. So the only thing that we had for an activity was on Friday nights. They'd put us in a room, about a 500 square foot garage type, but it's in the dorm. But that's about the size of it, with about a 40-inch TV, and all the girls would grab their little blanket and a pillow, and we'd all lay on the floor to watch a PG-13 DVD that was picked out by somebody in the group for whatever reason. And you get like a little bag, those like brown lunch sacks. They make a big pot of popcorn, like old school popcorn, and you get like a quarter amount in one of those little brown sacks. And that was like our activity every Friday. And if you got 3 LOAs, like you didn't do your chore good enough, it's not even that you didn't do your chore, but let's say you left like a dot on the mirror, or you had to pumice stone the toilet and you like didn't pumice it all the way, or like it was just like these little things. Then you get a LOA, which is, and then you get 3 strikes, which would lead to a LOA, which is a loss of activity, which means that while everybody's watching the movie, you'd have to sit in the hallway and do homework or write assignments or do something like that.
Okay. Did you guys get to work kitchen at all?
We only did the cleaning in like the cafeteria aspect. We had 2 cooks that would do the cooking. And honestly, they were probably the nicer part of our staff. Like I tell they felt bad for us.
Yeah.
And so they would try to make the food extra good, or, even though it wasn't the best, they would try to like liven up our days in there.
Okay, so the food wasn't horrible. Was there anything that you liked there?
Our pizza was actually pretty bomb. I've never had pizza like that was honestly that good. And our chef Donna, like one of the cooks, she made it every Friday, like from scratch. I don't know how she made it, but the pizza was always bomb.
Hell yeah, they used to make these things called pizza bows at the place I went.
Yeah.
Just these like French bread things, and it was like French bread, and then there would be pizza on top of it.
Oh, that sounds bomb.
It was bomb. Okay. Did you what phase did you have to get to graduate? Like what would you have to do to graduate from this place?
So phase 1 is basically you're there for at least a month. You've had to do that Facebook that I spoke about in the beginning. There was I wish I had it. You have 2 book reports. So it's like the Giving Tree and what's that other one? The 4 Commandments. Is that it? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah. There were 4 agreements?
4 agreements. So we had to do the 4 agreements and the Giving Tree. And then we had to do a book report. And they gave us like an outline of how like the book report was supposed to be written on, some therapized type of way. And, you had to complete that. You had to complete all your chores without a mistake. Every morning we had to wake up at 5 a.m. and run the track. So you had to be up and make sure that you weren't holding up the phase 1s. You weren't the last one. Basically, you had to show that you were doing everything in compliance with the program, and that you're not asking to go home, your letters, because you can't ask, You get a phone call after 2.5, 3 weeks, and it's 10 minutes monitorized with your parents. So, you better not be crying on that call or or saying anything like that. Basically, they want to see that. They want to see when you start communicating with your parents that you're not saying, oh, it's so horrible here that you want to go home and all that kind of stuff. They get you to that place where they can kind of trust you in that way. Then you'll get to phase 2. Now, phase 2 is where you see people get stuck. Like it could be 6 months, it could be a year. And that's because that's like the breakdown phase, like where you have to do a lot more work. They have set tasks for you. You have to do these things called challenge and action, which are these seminars where you go in and there's so many different things involved. From exercises where you're reliving trauma to exercises where you're supposed to be breaking through trauma to just things try to teach you outside the box, which all actually stem from occult-like society trainings.
It all comes from Synanon.
Yeah.
Synanon and Sea-Doo, I believe.
So I think Synanon, okay, so his wife, I think, the one that got, I think, let me see, Jeannie Courtney. So it might be Synanon or it might be one of the other ones, but I'm pretty sure it is. So the leader's wife and son are the one who ran my boarding school.
Interesting.
She was very, very big on those trainings.
I'm not surprised. It's very interesting how they had you do those book reports too, and they had you do seminars. Did they? So what were the names of the seminars, and how many would you have to do to complete the program?
So you had to do challenge, action, but you could be kicked out at any time. So you could be in a seminar and you could be scared. They like warn you, like, hey, you better be ready for it. You better like prepare yourself mentally. But you don't even know what you're preparing yourself for, by the way. Like, yeah. But they're like, if you get kicked out, the next one's not for 6 months, and that could be a phase decision.
Yeah.
If you haven't completed this training that we won't do for another 6 months, you can't move through this phase. Challenge, action, and then there's parent challenge and parent action. So your parents also have to do these seminars. They're obviously way, way dialed down for them. Like from what I was told, at least from what my parents' experience was in it, it's very, very less aggressive than what we went through. But they like try to demonstrate it in a more better way. So like, this is what your kids are doing too. And yeah, it's a lot of brainwashing. And I think obviously her being the wife of a cult leader, where she was obviously intertwined with running that cult,
yeah,
was a big play, which at the end, me and her had a very interesting conversation, where basically I was getting kicked out, which the 4th person to ever get kicked out, and I took it as a very prideful thing because I was working on it. I just didn't want to have to go crazy to get kicked out, but I knew that if I pushed their buttons in certain ways, which was money, that I can leave, and I did at the end, which we'll get to that. But she told me that I was going to end up in prison or a prostitute or dead and all these things, and basically told my family that right before the escorts came and got me for wilderness. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. I totally didn't even realize that I cut you off about the phases. So you're on phase 2. So after phase 2, it goes to phase 3, and then what do you have to do there?
Phase 2, you can actually ask like an upper phase, which, okay, so there's lower phases and upper phases, and majority of the privileges lie the same for the lower phases, which is 1 and 2. 1 obviously has the least of all, and then 3 and 4 being the upper phases. So phase 2, you get to have that phone call with your parents weekly, but it's monitored for 10 minutes. You get to go on area visits, which means your parents can fly out to the state of Arizona and you can go for a weekend with them in the state once a month. Which also, this thing is totally expensive. It's crazy. It wrecks up tons of money. And so then phase 2 also, there's more book reports. There's 2 more. There's a book report, 2 book reports for each phase. There is different activities you have to be involved with a certain amount, volunteering in a sense. You have to go, we went to this place called Chauncey Ranch, where we would go clean horse poop and clean the horses and do all that. And so that was one.
Child labor.
Child labor, basically, in other places for other people.
Yeah. Would you get Would you get like points for, or not points, but would you like earn like privileges for doing that? Like, would you?
Well, so what happened was I was actually called the businessman at my place because we didn't have like really that many experiences for when we did well. There was a lot of like punishments and kind of like the basic. So I created a upper phase rewards program where as long as girls didn't misbehave or get in certain markers or whatever, they'd be able to go on field trips. So we went to the movie theaters one time. I set up a trip to the water park where girls were, because we got $75 allowance a month to go to the student store, which is a closet in the dorm that had a bunch of stuff from Walmart that they upcharge. And because I became a kiss ass. I'm not gonna lie. I was trying to work the program. I'm like, get my ass out of here. If I'm gonna help out, then this is how I'm gonna get out. So I became part of the student store. I'd go with one of the staff members to Walmart to buy the products sometimes. Then I started the business, or the field trip program, where we had the $75 given to us. I said girls wanted to save $20 a month out of their stuff and put it towards the tickets, and we can get a group rate, because I'd use my one of my teachers in one of my classes was cool, where I had tech, and so he'd let me look up stuff to like put the presentation together. And so our teachers were like separate from the therapy. They like really came in as teachers from like 8 to 3 and then dipped. And so they also kind of felt bad for us. It was funny because it's like there was a lot of staff at our program that felt really bad for us. And then it was like the owners and like the runners and then the therapists that were like the scary gods to even them. It's like, well, I don't want your therapist to find out, or I don't want, like Jeannie to find out, or Brandon to find out, like the owners. But it was crazy because there's a lot of staff actually to this day. I was just messaging one that I'm cool with that she would sneak me Oreos. You know what I mean? And so that kind of thing. But so anyway, so I looked it up, and then I ended up getting dropped because I begged to go home on a visit. And then all the girls went to the water park without me. But yeah.
You set that up.
Yeah. So I set that up at the school because I was like, if we're like, I was always at the CLDs, which are community life directors, which were like above staff. They had more say and stuff, but they were like sometimes ex-girls who went to the program. So they were super brainwashed, but still felt bad for us in ways, And so I sat down with them and was like, well, if every girl puts about this money aside from their allowance, and they haven't received any consequences, and we have the vans, like, could we do this? So we proposed it, ended up getting passed. So that would started our field trip program, which was like every 2 to 3 months there'd be a field trip, whether it be to like the movie theaters for like Harry Potter, or we did the Harry Potter premiere where all the girls had to dress up like Harry Potter. That was part of it. Things like that. So I like wanted to make it better because I realized at one point, after begging and pleading and trying to get my parents, I was not leaving. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I'm going to try to make this place better at least, which worked for a long time. I was like, moving through the program. I was excited. But I was always in the back of, like, always, every time I saw my parents, I'm like, please guys, like, you don't get it. Like, I don't need to be here. Like, I don't need to be there. I don't want to be there. Like, I am good. I will behave. Just bring me fucking home. And, so my dad and I kind of had an agreement on a home visit that finally I was going to be coming home and that I wasn't going to go back. And through conversations with his significant other and some stuff that was said, it turned out that I was going to be going back, which led to me running on a home visit. And I turned on my MySpace at the time and posted up, and people were like, you're alive. I'd been gone for about 18 months, no contact. And like, people lived close by. We lived in a gated community. So I ran down the hill and I ran to one of my buddy's house, and he gave me a ride into town, and just kind of hopped around and stayed with somebody for the night until the next day. My brother, my mom was out of the country with my stepdad, and my brother had reached out, which I had a really big soft spot for, and was like, dude, you've been missing. Like, come on, just meet with me somewhere and we'll talk, and you don't have to go back. We'll figure it out. So I met him at a bowling alley in our hometown. And he goes, come on, let's go play like some games or whatever. And somebody that I knew from high school, of course, was working the counter. And so we play some games and I'm talking to him. He's like, why don't you want to go back? I'm like, dude, you wouldn't want to be there. He's visiting from college, by the way, at home. And I'm like, you wouldn't want to be there. You don't understand what I go through. Like, yeah, they paint it to be all hunky dory and stuff. And I have to talk like it's okay. But I'm like, you have no idea like the misery and like the torture that we have to face on a daily basis. And he was just like, oh, okay, whatever, feeling bad. He's like, why don't you guys use the bathroom? Like, you can come back to dad's. I won't send you back. I'm like, I'll go back, but I'm not going back to the program. I'll go back to dad's. Walk out the bathroom. There's the cops right there. I make a run for it. They have me arrested because I'm a child trying to run. And then I'm screaming, I want to be emancipated. I'm 17 at the time. And I'm like, I want to be emancipated. My mom, I'm trying to be like my mom, but my mom, of course, the one time I run on a home visit, my mom's out the country. And because I could have ran to her, but I get set. The cops like, dude, you can't be emancipated. You have no way of supporting yourself. I'm like, I got this mom. And they're like, well, she's out the country. So yeah, you got to go with your dad. So they take me back to my dad's house. My dad has my brother guarding my room, or this one room in our house, and I'm in there. And basically, like, I didn't really even talk to me. Or no, he did talk to me. He was like, no, he didn't talk to me. I just went into this room. He's like, you're gonna stay in here. Your brother's gonna watch you, like blah blah blah, and then like walked away. 2 a.m., 3 a.m. rolls around, and I'm laying on this couch and see two big old figures walk in, and big ass woman and man, and they're like, Angelique, you could do this the easy way, or you could do this the hard way. Because at first I pretended I was asleep, but it was like they were shaking me. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, stop. Like, and then finally out there, like, Angelique, you can do this the easy way or the hard way. So I said, okay, I'll do it the easy way. And they like kind of moved out of the way, and then I took off running. And I ran into the house, into the kitchen, and I ran to the knife block, and they got me right before I got to the knife block. And then my dad had given them some old beaten clothes of mine, which I didn't understand at all. Like old worn down like basketball shorts and t-shirt. And they had me change into that. And then I tried to run again. And at this point they handcuffed me and shackled me and then put me in the car. And they're like talking to me in the car, and I kind of calmed down. I'm like, yeah, I'm stuck. Like, we're already halfway to Morgan Hill. Like, we're halfway to San Jose to the airport. And they're like, Angelique, like, are you going to run when we get to the airport? Do we need to drive to Arizona? Or are you going to be like, good now? And I'm like, at this part, we're too far from anybody I know. I'm 17. I'm like, yeah, we're good. I'm going back, I guess. Like, you guys got me. And then I was handcuffed and shackled all the way through security. They gave over my paperwork, and I was like a little inmate going through the airport. And it was actually pretty traumatizing because it happened to be like sports season for every travel sport my age. So it was like 50 different soccer, basketball, baseball, whatever the hell teams, all traveling at like 6 a.m. to get to their shit. And I'm like with a sweatshirt over my handcuffs and my shackles. And then we had a connecting flight. So I ended up talking with my escorts. They ended up loving me. They like when they stopped 3 times after we hit Arizona, like landed in Arizona. We got like food 3 times. They stopped and got me an extra candy bar like right before we got there. They were like, we're so sorry we have to take you here, but this is our job. And they're like, you're like not that bad. Trust me. They're like, we've escorted 100 people. I'm not saying that like nobody deserves this, but they're just like, you know what I mean? They're just really nice. And so I get escorted. I get back. And I remember Marshall, the guy that ran the house, which is like the office in the front, I was like, welcome back, Angelique. And I was like, hi. And he's like, you know what's happening? I'm like, yep, phase orange. So that was like our discontinued lower phase, which is like your run risk. So you wear bright orange sweatshirt, joggers, no shoes, and, you know, you're a run risk. And then they had me on that for about like a day, until they realized I like was like, oh, like where the hell am I gonna go? We're in the middle of the desert. And then, but I decided I was gonna make their life hell. I was like,
back to Spring Ridge.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this is at Spring Ridge. So Yeah, they put me on or phase orange for like not even a couple hours, and then the owner was like, she's not going to run again. We just had her escorted. Just put her on phase 1, like embarrass her. And so I was on phase 1 again, and then they were going to put me on silence and separation. The silent separation on the second day because I was just like, you guys, I'm not staying here. Like, I was just very adamant. I was just telling them, I was like, I'm not going to stay here. At this point, my time at this program is done. I feel you guys are against me. You guys don't care what I do to improve myself. You guys don't care how much better I make myself. I only started staying longer when my dad donated because my dad's a wholesale grower of plants, like for Costco, Walmart, Home Depot, those like palm trees, flowers, big time. After he donated enough plants to decorate the entire school and like for a staff member's wedding, y'all just find benefit in keeping people who donate to this program here longer, which I have like multiple different females and girls who attended that I know that were there for like 3 or 4 years because their parents were giving scholarships to other girls, and they would find reasons, and make sure to keep them there. I'm like, there's no way that I'm staying at this $12,000 a month boarding school extra because they think I have a little attitude. That's absolutely absurd. I'm like, that's absolutely absurd. And my attitude was fighting against things that I thought were wrong and unjust as well. That's where my attitude would come in. When I'd be like, well, that's not right. And they'd be like, well, this is the way it is. And I'm like, but that's not right. So going back to Spring Ridge, so I got on phase 1, embarrassed the crap out of me. I said, I'm not leaving my bed. So that was the first thing. If I don't leave my bed, staff works very on schedule. Remember, they're very cheap. So, staff has to get all the girls out into the courtyard by a certain time. So they have it set up that they have to monitor a specific amount of girls at specific times. So if one girl decides to stay in the dorm when nobody else is in there, they got to call in an extra staff member. So that's what they had to do. So they had to bring in an extra staff member to just hang out in the dorm because I wouldn't leave. And then they took away my mattress. And then finally I would kind of get up and go eat and do little things and whatever. So they put me on one-on-one with the staff because they're like, if she's going to cause these problems, we're just going to keep her with one-on-one staff. And they put me on silence and separation from most of the community. They put me on silence, not separation. That came later. So I was on just silence, meaning the girls couldn't talk to me. They couldn't interact with me. I had to be just kind of going through the motions. And I'm like, dude, you guys don't get it. I'm not staying. I'm not staying. I'm not working this program. So when I go to the cafeteria, since we're in the middle of nowhere, I realized again, their thing was money. So I would grab napkins and I would throw them everywhere. And I'd be like, now you guys got to order some more napkins and go pick them up because they ain't going to get here in time. We're in the middle of the desert. So now you have to bring in another staff member who needs to go drive out 45 minutes to the closest town and pick up all the supplies. And I was just nuisance with them. I would go down to the track and act like I was going to play along and then just walk off to the other side. And I was just honestly just being a big nuisance, which I knew they bothered. They like order. They didn't like the girls not following order. They didn't want you to also leave an impression on anybody new or anybody around and that kind of thing. So I was going to mess with that whole thing, that whole vibe that they were trying to create. I was just going to mess with it to the point where, again, finally the last day, I wouldn't leave my room, not just in the morning to go run, but at all. So they came and then they took my mattress again. We had these lounges with couches. I went and laid on them. They flipped me off the couches. And I went on the other couches. They flipped me off those couches. Went to the other lounge, lay on those couches. They flipped me off those couches. I just kept kind of going with that. And finally, I was like, fine, you guys are going to let me sleep. Then I'm out. So I went to my room. They hadn't taken away my stuff because they never thought I was going to be this bold. Remember, 3 weeks or 2 weeks before this, I was running that program. I was doing the business stuff. I was helping. I was a big sister. I was going to play this thing to the max. So they didn't really think I was going to go balls to the wall, to get the hell out. And so I went in my room. They didn't have my shoes tied up or in my, with the phase orange stuff. So I grabbed my tennis shoes and I literally walked off campus, and they had a staff member stand like that in the doorway. I went under her legs. So I walked off campus. They had one of the staff members follow me in her truck, and people kept trying to pull over to pick me up because I was waving and shit. I'm kind of hitchhike. And I had a big ass boulder in my hand too. And they were moms were pulling over left and right, women, are you okay? And then she would honk, leave her alone. We're waiting for the police to come. So they had the police come, and the police get me, and they're like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, I'm not going back there. And they're like, no, like they talk to the school and they find out like most of the cops in the area know about the school too, because they kind of pre-set it up. And they're like, no, you have to go back. Like, you can't just like leave and all this stuff. Well, they get me back onto campus and then they have me paraded around by the cop for a minute and then have me arrested for assault for going underneath the staff member's legs. And then I go to juvie, I get to juvie, do the whole thing and call my mom. I think she's going to come get me. No, that's not the case. I ended up preferring juvie over the boarding school. I was like, oh, this isn't bad. Like we get freedom a little bit here. Look at this. We got tea. I'm like we can talk whatever we want. Like, I'm like, you guys don't understand. And then the next day, one of the correctional officers comes and she's like, okay, Barcelona, time to go. And I'm like, oh my God, my mom's here. Yay. And they're like, no, it was the owner of the school's son and one of the staff members. And I was like, no, I'm good. I'm going to stay. And like, she was like, no, like this is jail. You have to leave. And I was like, no, I would rather stay here. And she was like, that's fucked up. And she's like, but you got to go. And so then I got released to them. And in the car ride, I remember like it was just dead silence. And then I go, you guys know I'm not going to stay, right? And they're like, don't worry, we know. And so that night I got then brought back onto campus and then it was silent separation, like completely. They didn't want anybody to see me. And I was put in a room with just a mattress on the floor and basically in there until I think it was 2 days actually I was in there. It's kind of hard because it was like you lose track of time. And yeah, it was 2 days I was in there and then the escorts showed up. And then these escorts were like pretty funny because they've never seen somebody so excited to go with an escort. Like they showed up and they're like, they came in all quiet, like sneaky again, like they're coming to get me. And then like, they're like, the staff member liked me and she was like, hey, Angelique, like they're here to get you. And I was like, oh, cool, let me get my stuff. I have a bag already packed over here because they gave me like a small bag of my stuff already. Like they're cleaning out my room early. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. Let's go. Where are we going? Next program. I'll work it way better than this one because this one, they weren't letting me work it. I could do everything right and still be stuck here so they could collect my parents' money. So, and they could say everything right to make sure that it's easier for them. And my dad was like, busy. So it's perfect. You could have a place where my daughter's taken care of and I feel like she's being helped and all this blah, 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 blah. And I can live and work my busy professional life and with my wife and my new family or whatever. So it was an easy fix for them. And so I got my stuff and I was super excited and I was like, where are we going? And they're like, we can't tell you that. I'm like, but another program, right? Like, and I'm like thinking another boarding school. And then we're riding finally like halfway through the drive. They're like, you're really cool. Like they started liking me too. And they're like, you're not like the typical of what we expect, like when we escort. And I'm like, nah, I'm ready to work whatever program's coming. I do not care. I just want to get through this and get out. Like at this point, I know that's the only way I can do it. They ended up being really cool. I stayed in contact with them after Wilderness. And I went into Wilderness. They dropped me off and they're like, hey, like about 20 minutes before, they were like, or no, probably like 45 minutes before, because it's about an 8-hour drive. 9-hour drive. And they were like, so you're going to Wilderness. And I was like, oh, cool. All the girls with SRA already did that. I was like, they said they liked it better. So maybe like at this point, I'm so optimistic. I'm a year and a half in. I've already like missed out on so much. I'm like, and I heard it's only like 3 months. I was like, cool. If I work this program, maybe I go home. So I go to Wilderness, do the whole shebang there. Honestly, after SRA, Wilderness was a walk in the park. It was so like it felt like really intense military camping, I guess. It was fucked up and there was like a lot of like, like there was one time I refused to hike, so I just plopped down because my back was hurting.
You have to have different people lead every day, and then if they got you lost, then you're fucked.
Yeah. So like it was more like you're really like dealing with wilderness shit that's scary as fuck and you're put there by other people. But like compared to like the torture I felt like or like the manipulation, I felt so much more on in the boarding school because it was a whole controlled environment. It's a whole controlled thing. And some wildernesses I know are a lot worse too.
Yeah.
But maybe because I was just so thankful to be out of Spring Ridge and this race that I had run to leave there. And like, that was my plea to, like, at the end was like, I don't care if I go anywhere else. I'll take any other program. I was like, I just wanted to get out of this one because once they know they have their hooks in your parents' money, they know how to work it.
Yeah.
And
you're lucky they didn't send you to like Tranquility Bay or something like that.
well, honestly, like my parents were like 200K in, didn't know ever they were going to have to pay 200K for something like this. And the last 80,000 on top of that was wilderness for 60 days. So, I'm lucky. Yeah. I'm lucky. And also like, as much as I think if I would have stayed at SRA and it would have been like the same shebang and my dad would have believed it worked and I was doing this, whatever he thought the illusion was that was perceived by him, that they would have no problem paying for SRA till I was 18, you know, because I would have definitely signed myself out. But because he like finally like he's like, this place didn't work at all. She just like she just went bonkers. Like that's at least how he saw it. So then at that point he was like, I'm not paying for this shit anymore. Don't work. Like I'm 200K in the hole and we're about to start over. Like so the last thing was wilderness, and then after that I went to live with my mom. But it was funny because even at wilderness, I have to say for my wilderness, maybe because I was just so well trained from SRA already, they were quick to tell my parents like, yeah, she's pretty good actually. Like she don't need to be here that long. Like, you know, like I'm like, yeah, because I was already broken, molded, sculpted. Like I know what you guys want. This is usually the starter phase. Like this is to break the mold. Like I'm like, I will be exactly what you guys need. Like, and then honestly, for a long time afterwards, the trauma was very hidden. You get very like stuck. Like even now, like even talking about it, like there's things I'm okay with that I shouldn't be okay with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it took really Paris's documentary, which one of my girlfriends made me watch because she said like, this is your life. You need to go watch this. And it brought back a lot. It really like for like even at the Survivor prom, I was talking to some of the girls there and had a realization. It's like I was living like very survival-esque in myself, just in general, like as a survivor. Not letting certain people get too close, or I did get like I had a marriage right like really young that I thought was going to be like that turning point in my life of trust and whatever. Turned out to be the opposite, which then fed into obviously the trust issues built from being sent to a place where you lose all your rights and you're sent there by the people you're supposed to trust the most in the world. So with all of that, it took breaking code silence for me to realize like a lot of things that like, yeah, on the outside could look really great, but mentally and like relationship wise, I'm still pretty fucked in a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it has to do with like those core things of, you know, your parents are supposed to be the people that protect you and care for you more than anyone else in the world and never let anything happen. And sometimes I'm like, I want to say majority of the time, at least in my opinion, announced to them, they don't know what was happening to us. At least, or they didn't want to believe it. Yeah, I forgot where I was going with that.
It's all good. So how long were you in total at Spring Ridge, and then how long were you at Wilderness?
So I was at from March 9th, 2010 to mid-July 2011. I was in SRA. So okay. A year and 4 months. Year 3-4 months, yeah. And then at Wilderness for 2.5.
Okay. And go ahead.
No, go ahead.
How many people would you say on average were at Spring Ridge when you were there, and how many people would you say on average were at Wilderness when you were there?
So on average, there was about 65 girls at the program to about 70, I think, at max.
At Wilderness or Spring
At
Ridge?
Spring Ridge. But
Were there boys too?
no, only girls, and it was rotation though. So though there was only 65 girls there at a time to 70, I probably met about 200 girls. Because it
There
was
more people there throughout the time you were there.
Yeah, like the 65 that were there when I got there were not there when I left. Majority of them. Maybe like a few of the ones that got there my time.
But you're saying more came.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So like every week or 2 weeks, we'd get another person. And about like every 3-4 months you lose a person, or there's a graduation, which was every like 5 months. There'd be a graduation where 4 girls would graduate. So it was like a reoccurring system of people coming in and out.
What would they do for graduation? Did they have any like huge ceremony for it? Because at the place I went, they made like a huge ceremony thing out of it.
Yeah, so you get like this white gown, this white big robe thing, and you get to like walk, you get like roses given to you by like every girl in the program, giving you like an affirmation, and like they make it a big shebang. Like there's like these songs that are sang, and that and you do like a dance that you're coming into your new person of who you are, because we had like this dance instructor, and you would choreograph a dance and perform it and stuff like that.
In the seminars, did they have you make something called an I am statement or a purpose statement?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember what yours was?
I think mine was I'm strong, I'm smart, I'm beautiful.
Okay. And then did they at any, or what level did you get to? I think you said you got to level 2 at Spring Ridge, right?
I all the way to phase 3. And that's also what made that whole visit where I was like wanting to run, is that I was on the verge of hitting phase 4 for like 7 months, 6 to 7 months. And I'm like, why the hell aren't y'all pushing me over? I've done all of these things way above some other people that have already gone up in the program. Like, what is going on? And that's where like I started getting fed up with as much as I work this, it ain't gonna work. You know what I mean? I literally just felt like I was going to be there till I was 18. And when I realized that, while I worked it, I was like, okay, if I work it, I'll get out in time. I'll make it back for my senior year at least. Like all these different things. Once I realized that wasn't going to happen, that was just not an option. I was like, okay, I got to bust out.
Did you guys have school you had to do there? Like self-taught school? Was there?
We had a full curriculum. We did have, so we had a big academic building, not big, it's like 4 or 5 classrooms with like an APR, which is all purpose, like little gymnasium, but like carpeting. And then we had a hut that was like down the hill. It was an art hut, which is a big warehouse. And then like half of it was art and then half of it was like a dance studio. And then we had the math buildings, which were near the art hut, which was like these 3 little classrooms that were for math.
Okay, and would you have like an actual teacher teaching, or would it be self-taught?
No, we had real teachers. So we were, we had to do like the standardized tests. We had to do all of that kind of stuff. Honestly, like a lot of the girls, at least from what I've heard and my experience, thought like the classroom was almost like a getaway from like the program. The teachers were nicer than like the staff. If like they wanted to incorporate snacks into like the lesson in some way, they were allowed to. So like they had like their own kind of in chargeness in their classrooms, which was kind of like a little safe haven. Okay.
And when you got when you got to a new phase, was the staff or the people there deciding so the place I went, you'd have to like get support. Like you'd like stand up and be like, hey, my name is Jordan Von Erickson. I'm going up for whatever level you're going up for. And then please stand if you don't support me. And then people would stand if they didn't support you, or if they supported you, they would stay seated. So like, would the staff decide that you got to the next phase, or would you earn it, or would you have to stand for support? How did that work?
So the official, like the last thing was that it would be staff and your therapist. It'd be their therapist and the owner and your community life director, your CLD, which is the one right above staff. So basically, right before you're going up for a phase, like to be talked about for a phase raise, you would have we'd normally have a feedback group every other Sunday or every Sunday, which is basically like your time to shine if you want to shit on someone or like make yourself look good. And that was always actually that was one of the things that was hard. You were trying to work together with the girls to get through the program, but being put against each other was sometimes some of the ways to get through the program, which sucked. So you get feedback group, and that could break your chances. Like some people could say something in feedback group and you could be up for a phase raise the next week, and they could be like, well, I overheard that you were complaining or about this and this and this, or that you didn't do your chore on time, or you've been kind of giving attitude or whatever. And now that goes, because the CLDs are there, back into the conversation that they have when they go to it's like a board meeting per se, to choose if you're going to be moved up or not. And then they'd make it a big deal. So we'd be doing an activity in the courtyard, let's say on Saturday we're painting bags or something for art project, or we're in the cafeteria for a meal. Then they would be like, hey, is blah 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 blah. They try to make it fun or whatever to make it a big deal, so you really want to move up to the next phase. It's all in that style. So they'd be like, Angelique, where are you? Did you know that you were and they'd pretend to get you in trouble, and then they'd be like, a phase 3 now, and they'd pull out your new color shirt and make it so super exciting. And again, it was to pump you up psychologically. It's all just really manipulation, because they do it in front of people, so that way everybody's like, oh my god, I want to be a phase 3, or I want to get moved up, or all these things. But yeah.
Okay. And did your credits transfer? Your school credits when you got
yes, they did. There was only a few classes that didn't,
okay,
because they made them up, some of our art classes and stuff. But for the academics, yeah, majority of them transferred.
Okay. And let's see, did they load you up on prescription medications when you were there, or did they take you off of them?
Load me up.
Okay, so they had you on a bunch of different meds.
Yeah. So my whole childhood, I'd always been on Strattera, or I think it was Strattera. No, Strattera, which is a form of Adderall for kids.
Yeah, to be on that. Yeah.
Right. So I was just on something like that. When I got there, I got onto Abilify. I got onto Traz. I got on to the point where you obviously don't really know what you're taking. And I was on a home visit on phase 3, and one of my cousins looked at my prescription, and she was like, what are you even taking? And she was about 20 at the time. I'm 16. She's probably 19, 20. And she was into that, knowing stuff. So she looks it up, and she goes, this is an antipsychotic. It's supposed to chill you the fuck out and make you kind of numb and stuff. And I was like, no, I didn't know that. And she ended up telling her mom and my parents, and they were like, oh, well, that's what the doctors put her on. We don't know. But yeah, so they would definitely pump up on the meds. And then you'd have to do every night, you'd have to go to med call, where you do the whole, put the meds on your tongue and swallow it, and then cough. Okay, my meds.
They used to give you they used to give us saltines when we
saltine crackers and a little cup of water, one of those little cups, and that. Yep.
Let's see. Did they have if you got in trouble, did they have any sort of intervention or solitary confinement there?
So they'd have isolation. So first would be silence, then it'd be silence separation, then it's isolation with one-on-one with the staff. So we had a few incidences where girls tried to harm themselves at our program. Honestly, one of them, I was like, I don't know how you think you're going to hang yourself in the shower with a shoelace, but you know what I mean? But these were cries for attention. It wasn't just, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, I need help. I need to get the hell out of here kind of thing. And that girl did get out of there. So she got what she wanted. And she went to another program, and she ended up being out in a few months. So they became big on not leaving girls alone because of that. Cause somebody shows up dead, that's going to be a problem. And they became very particular, especially we had a male staff member sleep with one of the girls. And I thought it was so crazy how that was just, I really thought it happened about my 3rd month in. And I was like, oh yes, they're shutting this place down. I'm out. And it just got swept right under the rug. Yeah. And everything kept moving. I'm like,
was this something you heard about or that you saw or that you?
No. So what happened was she was in my caseload. So we had something called a caseload, which is like everybody was the same therapist twice a week. You also have group therapy with everyone in your caseload and your therapist. So what happened was one of the girls had been passing notes with the staff member, the male staff member. And it was crazy because my dad actually called him out when he came on camp. When you're on phase 1, your parents come on one on-campus visit where they come every day for a weekend and visit. And my dad was like, why is this male staff member here? It's the only male, like regular staff, not like a therapist or like in the house or like, but with the girls all the time. And he goes, I don't know. I get a weird vibe from Angelique, like stay clear from him. And I'm like, okay, he's my staff. I can't really, but yeah. And so then literally a month later, everybody gets called into emergency caseloads. So if something went down, they would separate the girls instantly into their therapist and have it handled. And so they knew that stuff was going to get out. And so what happened was she happened to be in my caseload, the girl. So she came back from her home visit. And what had happened was they were passing notes, her and the staff member. And he got her number for her cell phone that she had at home or whatever. And he planned to take his whole family to Disneyland on her home visit because she was from LA. Then, while his kids and wife were at the park, he went and got another hotel room, picked her up, and they went and had sex multiple times. Then he took her back. Then her parents, when she went to go see her friends on another day, went through her computer and her phone and found the stuff. And then obviously she got sent back the next day to Spring Ridge, and then everybody was notified. So then we got put into a caseload, and she had to tell us everything. So I heard it from her mouth.
Okay. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Do you think that it was a grooming thing, or do you think that she actually not that she wanted it, but do you think it was like a groom? Like, do you think he was like grooming her and got her number that way?
Definitely. Absolutely. Like you're in a space with a lot of vulnerable girls doing there's no really male figures, no men around that much. Like, you know what I mean? Other than like our therapist, you see him for an hour in a group therapy or an hour by yourself once a week. Like, it's not like we're like really around, men. She was a very sexually active girl. So there's also all these things the staff know about you. Like you have a file and they know all your stuff. So absolutely. Do I feel it was grooming? Yeah.
Okay. Did anything ever come of that, or did it just kind of hush hush at the facility?
Hush hush. She ended up still graduating like a couple months later. She was a phase 4. They pushed her through. She graduated.
I wonder if they ever had any more contact after the program, because there's a lot of stories of people either leaving the program together, staff and student, or they link up afterwards.
Right. I'm not sure. We also had another girl who ran, and I'm not sure it was a staff, but she got somebody in Prescott to pick her up. I don't think he was a staff, but he happened to do with the school somehow. And she stayed with him. They didn't find her for like a month, but then she ended up going back.
Okay. Interesting. So you said you ran a couple times from there. So would they not like restrain you? Was there no like hands-on stuff there? Because I just like.
No, there was no hands-on. So like, and the reason, like, I think that, like, remember Jeannie coming from a cult mentality, like, I feel like it was way more about the psychological aspect, because if girls didn't get with the program, they would get them out. It's like, and not like they would find like a worse program usually to send them to, right? Because they would always say like, you guys are lucky, like this isn't as bad as some of the other programs, and we actually do IQ tests, so all the girls who come here have to have a really high IQ and be very smart, and so it was like a grooming in that way, that if you were out of line too much, like, yeah, you can get out of line and if they could fix you. If it's just enough that they could, oh, look at the miracle, we worked on this one kind of thing. But if you were just like too defiant, they wouldn't take girls that were just like too defiant on purpose, because it messed with like their image of what they were creating.
Okay, and this spring range was in Arizona, is that correct?
Yes.
Was the wilderness in Arizona too?
Utah.
Utah? Interesting. Okay. Let's see. Did you notice any of the staff doing any drugs there? Did you notice any of the students doing any, like, did you hear about or see any drugs being smuggled in or any of that sort?
My first day I got there, after I get back to my room after this terrifying, horrific manicotti meal, which I don't hate on manicotti. My fiance actually loves manicotti, and he's like so bummed. He's like, I'm so mad they traumatized you. It's actually good. I'm like, I'll never eat it. But I went back to my room, and a girl had just got back from a home visit, and she got dropped from 3 to 1. And so apparently they were like bringing Excedrin migraine back on campus and snorting it to get like some type of high, because these girls were like into hardcore drugs prior or whatever. And then there was an incident about 6 months, that girl, 6 months later, it was one of these girls' birthdays who passed away actually after the program, like crazily. It was her birthday, and one of the staff, so we had in the house was our like front office that was like when you first drove onto the property and drove on down the path, that's like the first thing you see, like the welcome office. It's like a little house. There's a basement in there, so we do exercises in there sometimes in the winter, or like do like little exercises if we're doing like social groups, or you know what I mean, like little breakouts or whatever. And so the staff was cool with the students, and so she brought some like weed and like shit onto campus and took those girls into the basement, and they like had a little birthday party. I was there. I was in my dorm. I was definitely not the one that they were telling about the sketchy shit. I'm not gonna lie. And not that I was a snitch. I never snitched on anybody, but like I was definitely like following the program, trying to get the hell out. Yeah. And these girls I thought were too, which was funny. So that she ended up getting fired, and all these girls got dropped that went to this birthday party in the basement, and like smoked a little weed, and I don't know what they took, but yeah.
Okay. And let's see. What was the hardest part about being at both of the places, and how did you deal with it?
I think the hardest part was feeling very alone. There is not a place, I guess, like you would relate it to prison. You know what I mean? Like you feel like you don't have much hope. So ironically, I really related when Paris talked about, because I've found like some success in business and, you know, growing my career and stuff, that I like just couldn't, like I would imagine the life that I'm going to live when I get out. I'm like, I went through all of this. I'm going to have the best life ever when I get out of here, because this isn't going to be my end of my story. So I had to like really be a dreamer. I would say like I would daydream all the time about like what I'm going to do when I get out, like even just about food, because, you know, you're on such a strict regimen of food and certain things to only eat, and you don't get to eat what you want. So it's just like, just fantasizing about like just the life I was going to have outside of there is basically what got me through.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And when, let's see, what was the hardest, like, how was reintegrating into society when you got out? Like, relating to people, like, what did you struggle with the most as a result of the program?
So I went from 1 week living in Utah in wilderness to the next week being at Newport Beach in high school, and starting at a brand new high school in Orange County in Newport frickin' Beach, where I'm seeing girls wear crop tops and shorty shorts, and I just came from restriction. And even at my old public high school, it wasn't like that. And, you know, you have to grow up really quick in these programs. You don't really have a choice. You have to realize life's really hard, and there's a lot of struggles and there's a lot of things. So the stuff some people talk about just becomes like, oh my God, why am I wasting my breath? Like, this stuff doesn't even matter. You guys don't even get it. Like, so there was that integration. I was very vocal about what I went through right away, that I just came out of this program. People thought that was weird. Like, and I was just like, honestly, it's just like, you don't know. It was just kind of a weird integration. I was so excited to be around people, so I wanted to talk all the time. I was really excited. I was like, but also it was a little weird because like I didn't care about the same things other people cared about. You know, I I was a little bit of a goody two shoes from being brainwashed and being like, I don't want to try certain things or do certain things. Um, or I was on a very strict curfew. I had to sign a contract when I went home. So up until
contract?
A life contract, yeah. And so up until the moment I turned 18, basically, I'm scared shitless that at any point I could be sent back to a program. And
So you actually lived it for a while.
Yeah.
How long did you live the contract?
All the way till I was 18.
How long about was that?
About 9 months.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So
the longest period I've heard anybody ever say that they actually. Because usually what I see is that it gets thrown out right away. The parents think they have a problem with it, but the fact that it kept on for that long, wow.
well, it's kind of like my mom wasn't like, oh, the contract. I went to live with my mom. So I wasn't living with my dad. I was living with my mom and her boyfriend, now my stepdad. And so it wasn't like she always like threw it down my throat or anything like that. It was more like, I'm so scared that I will go back to this.
Yeah.
I am going to follow this. Like my curfew went at one point to like, I think 11:30 or something like that. And I'd be like 11:26 down the road, like screeching down, like trying to pull into like my place as fast as possible, running down our condo hallway to run to the condo to be like, I'm here right on time. Don't worry. Like, I'm not late. Like, I don't want to be sent back anywhere. Like, I think at that point I was traumatized enough that I didn't want to risk it.
For sure. That's crazy. Well, I'm sorry you had to go through that. Let's see. If you could go back in a time machine and not go through that boarding school, would you do it and why? Like both of them, obviously.
Right.
Knowing what you know now. Knowing what you know now.
Knowing what I know now. Honestly, I'm a big believer in God. I'm not that like God made these boarding schools or whatever. But as much as it fucked me up, I also think it made me strong. And I hate to say that trauma makes you strong because it's not supposed to or whatever, but it also made me a lot stronger. Like I said, I've had some success and I'm happy at where I'm at in my life and where I'm going and what I'm accomplishing. I sit in some big rooms with some older men and I can hold my own and negotiate some pretty big deals. I think that also comes from not only that, like I ended up going in the military for a while after boarding school. So like I systematically, like I just felt like it would work for me. And it did for a little bit. And I think having to go through so much makes me not deal with so much bullshit, which allows me to really read into things. So would I want anybody to go through what I went through? No. Like, and maybe I'm weird in that for myself, is it fucked up and whatever, but do I think it made me who I am today, who I'm proud of? There's a lot of aspects of myself that are still fucked up. I'm still in therapy. I'm still dealing with emotional relationship issues. Do I know what would have happened if I would have lived with my dad and his now wife for so long, and the type of torture and abuse that was faced there? Honestly, I can't say. I have a lot of friends from this experience. I have a lot of trauma from this experience. I don't know if I have a little bit of Stockholm with the experience, which I feel like some people do, where at the same time, it was one of the only places where I had a lot of girls where we were like a sisterhood for a while because we were all going through the same thing, even though we had to kind of pounce up against each other at times, from the chaos and the life that was going on at home, to being bullied and to everything that was going on in my life. I always said for a while that I don't mind that I went there. It was the amount of time and the amount of the extremes that were taken. I always said if they could redo this in a way that's actually to help troubled teens and to help people that are dealing with emotional traumas from their childhood and their families, there'd be a possibility of making it work to actually create the community, and make something. But there's just so much, the people that created and founded this industry didn't do it with that intent, at least in my eyes. I think they did it out of greed and out of money and out of hunger, if maybe they did start in that capacity, and that it turned into a whole beast. But do I believe that, like, if it could have been shorter and less traumatizing in certain ways, that it would have been a great experience to have a sisterhood and have a place where you can deal with things? I just believe the therapy wasn't geared towards like general therapy of helping you as a person. It was more behavioral therapy to get you to be what they wanted you to be. And that's where, obviously psychologically fucks you up.
Yeah. Have you talked to your parents about how it affected you? Have you been able to forgive your parents? I've forgiven my parents, but I'll never forget what happened.
Right.
So where are you with your parents?
With my mom, so she didn't really want me to go there, obviously, as the get-go, and she really wanted me to get out multiple times. So for her, it was a really hard experience for her to have me there as well. And so even for the longest time, it was hard for her to hear about it, and for me to tell her to watch the documentary and to do this stuff. It was about a couple years ago where finally she was like, Angelique, you have gone through like a lot, like, and she acknowledged it and, apologized. Because, first of all, in her gut, she didn't want me there in the first place, but on top of it, she didn't know everything that was happening. And it wasn't in her control. And so she feels a lot of guilt for that. So I didn't blame my mom for sending me there. Also, there was times while I was there that I would put blame and resentment on her not fighting harder to get me out, but also understanding now of being a mother who has gone through a custody battle and understanding how the courts and stuff work in regards to certain things. I definitely have my child, but like either way, like I understand like what she went through, and legally at the time she didn't have the balance to stand on because of everything. That it was really torturous for her too, and traumatizing for her because she couldn't control or have a decision in what her daughter did. With my dad, for the longest time, his thing is SRA saved your life. It made you chewed it up, you spit it out, blah, 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 blah. Like, and it's like, yeah, but it really fucked me up too, Dad. Like, and I don't think he really had, like an understanding to it. Because every time I try to bring up, it was like, oh, that place saved your life. That place saved your life. And that's where, breaking code silence comes into place, where a lot of parents really think that because you go with the system just to, get out, and Spring Ridge got shut down at the beginning of this year, mid this year. And for me, it was really emotional. I started crying. I was really excited. I happened to talk to my dad that day and I was just like, I'm so excited. I'm overwhelmed with emotion. He's like, what's going on? And I'm like, they shut down Spring Ridge today. And he goes, oh, why? And I'm like, I know that, and I'm finally and my dad's a narcissist. And I love him and we are rebuilding our relationship, but you got to know what you know. And, with that, I'm very sensitive in how I speak to him on certain things. So I don't bring a reaction or cause a riffle or, do something unbeknownst that will cause a problem. So, I was like, I know that you think Spring Ridge was life-saving, but I really need you to understand that there's a lot of bad things and things that were not okay. Though they painted a pretty picture, though there's a lot of accomplishments and blah, blah, blah that came out of there and whatever. I'm like, there's a lot of things that were not okay and that were really bad and traumatic and abusive that happened there. And obviously the state agrees because they're shut down.
Yeah.
And that kind of like was an eye opener for him. And like, I was tearful when I was talking to him about it. And that was kind of like, he was like, well, you've really overcome. And he's trying to like, it make himself feel better kind of in the situation, Oh my God, he's calling. That's weird. He doesn't call that often. His ears must have been ringing. Yeah. And that was kind of like more of an eye opener for him on what we had to go through. And then there's been a time, I think I told him I went to the prom. He was like, well, you've really come a long way. And, and I think there's a guilt aspect as the parents, of like, shit, I put my child through this, and having to admit that to themselves and really like.
So I spent money to put my child through this. A lot of money. That comes into play. A big part of it too is that I spent fucking all this money. I can't just like be like, oh, I just did this to fuck up my kid. Like,
yeah, and I didn't do it to help them. I find out I did it to fuck them up in a way.
Yeah.
And
a lot of parents can't admit that,
Yeah. And so I think that's where he's at. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's like, oh, like, yeah, it sucked, but yeah, you're better. You're good. Like,
trying to at least like come out with at least some positive outfit. Like, but it helped you in this way.
Right.
So maybe some of my money was not well spent, but like better spent, like.
Right. Like,
so,
it wasn't a complete waste. Like.
Yeah. I feel, yeah.
Yeah, he's calling again.
Okay. And so let's see. About like is it your belief that these like places like these boarding schools like is it your belief that they should all just be shut down, or is it your belief that they maybe should or even could be regulated? Do you think that they could all be regulated, and do you think that that would work, or do you think that they should all just be shut down?
I think they'd have to all be shut down and restarted from the ground up.
Okay.
I think there's too much systematically already in play there. Hey, he just texted me that's important, and he never texts me that. Do you?
Yeah, we can actually just end this interview real quick.
Okay, let's go ahead. Let's wrap up.
Okay, so is there just anything else you want people to know about your experience, or maybe something you want to tell a parent that is thinking about sending their kid to a place like this?
I wouldn't. I would, honestly, I think also that some of these places are honestly kind of a cop-out for parents that are really busy and successful and don't want to take the time that they need to spend on their child. And because they're so caught up in their own lives. I believe that, if your child needs to be removed from their environment because they're in a very toxic place, that there are normal boarding schools that are regular, kind of like a mini college or whatever. And there are other places, like if there has to be removed from a certain environment, whether it be because of drugs or gang or whatever kind of affiliation it may be, and it's very dangerous for the child. I think there's other places to relocate your child that's a positive environment where you can also get outside therapy if there's something that they need. But do I say sticking them in a troubled camp is exactly the right thing? No. Do I think some forms of wilderness are okay? For Red Cliff, again, I can't give a clear image because I didn't go straight into it. I went into it after already being traumatized for almost a year and a half. So for me, it was so much easier. But do I think maybe like a 30-day like kind of hiking program is good, like for kids to be out in the nature and stuff like that? Not including labor and abuse and shit. You know what I mean? There are certain things. That's how they sell these programs. They sell the right stuff. They just don't do it. So yeah. I believe that if there was like somebody who took initiative, and especially I think it'd have to be survivors, that really took initiative because they know what they went through and create something a new like system that helps like kids that are really going through it and meeting them where they're at rather than trying to change somebody completely.
For sure, for sure. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And if you ever want to do a part 2, just let me know and we will make it happen.
Yeah, for sure.
And please make sure you like the video, share it, and subscribe if you have not already. And we will see you next time. Peace.
Bye.